shows or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to Red Devils Talk, brought to you by the Football Masterclass. It has been a minute, hasn't it, guys? Honestly, I was just saying to them, I've been speaking to them, I haven't seen them for ages. We haven't spoke about United for a long time. So I'm joined as always by Ciaran and Joe and James Ridge, who is an aspiring journalist. He will be probably in about 3 to 4 years' time. He'll be the one coming on, giving us all the transfer news and all the gossip. He'll be the new David Ornstein. Look, I said Ornstein, not Luckhurst, so you're in good hands there. But look, it's great to be back. Ciaran, how are you doing, mate? It's been a minute. Did you have a nice weekend? And are you feeling positive today about talking about United?
Yeah, I had a really good weekend. It's been real cold to start this week, but in Dublin the last kind of couple of days been pretty nice, so can't complain. We have a bit of sunny weather, and look, anytime you win, it's a positive time to be a United fan.
Absolutely. And Joe, look, we've got a lot to talk about today. And look, Manchester United won. More positives and negatives for you?
I wouldn't say necessarily more positives than negatives. I think there's a nice balance on both. I think obviously the performances have got a bit of a worrying trend recently and have been a concern. But again, at the same time, I think that's 25 points now from losing positions this season. And I think you have to put some credit next to that as well. I think, to show a spirit like that, that shouldn't be sort of ignored or downplayed either. So I think, I'm not exactly happy with how the team are playing at the moment. But on the whole, like Ciaran said, if you can't be happy when we win, then that's a sad place to be. So I'm satisfied, I would say.
That's a good answer. And guys, we've got a lot of you in the chat. If you're here for the first time, please smash the subscribe button. That'd be absolutely fantastic. We'd love to get you involved and hear your thoughts as well. James, I'm going to come to you first. Welcome, of course. Your first time here on the Football Masterclass has been rebranded about 7 times, hasn't it? You're starting to lose touch of what it is. But look, how are you feeling in general about United? I want to get your thoughts because we've done a lot of shows in the summer, haven't we, together? We haven't done anything recently. So how are you feeling about our progress and how are you feeling about things about United? Because I think at the moment you're seeing a very big divide. I don't want to talk about Ollie in and Ollie out. I'm not really interested in that. I'm more interested in sort of your views on United and just the toxicity because it is a bit draining, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, I just want to say thank you for having me on. It's brilliant to finally come back on. But I think we were talking a little bit about it beforehand, weren't we? About the progress and the barometers for progress that you should realistically be using for United, because it's very easy for us as fans who have grown up with success to expect to win the league every year. But I don't think we haven't had consecutive top four finishes since Fergie left. So I don't know how we can be expecting to even challenge for a league realistically. But in that sense, once you sort of restrict your expectations in that sense, as hard as it is, I think the progress that we're showing both on and off the pitch, on the pitch, within Solskjaer's reign, the progress has been questionable, I think. But off the pitch, it's remarkable, and I think we're showing signs of becoming a proper football club now, as much as we possibly can under the Glazers. Anyway, I think we're making good appointments, we're making smart decisions financially, with being more ruthless with players that aren't in the bigger picture anymore, and I think we're being a little bit more savvy with our actual business as well. Other than maybe last summer, I think that was a bit of a wayward one, but. Yeah, I think I was saying to you, I'm still firmly Ollie in because he's not shown any sign of stopping this progression that we're on. I think that at the minute he's being brought in to do a job which is progress us forward into and get us to a better position. But once you stop seeing that progression, I think then you can start to ask for his head in a way and start to question why he's in charge. But yeah, I'm sure we'll go on to the toxic fan base soon enough. So I'll leave that for the time being. But it is pretty horrible at the minute.
Yeah, look, you make some fantastic points. Ciaran, I'm going to bring you in here because James mentions the off-field success. Let's call it success, and we'll call it the on-field success. And he actually makes a really good point. Something that I've said many, many times. A to B, United need to get someone to stop the rot. They need someone to come in and to essentially gut out what needed to be gut out and then turn the club round. I don't think anyone can really deny that Ollie's done that. And I think the ones that do are showing that they have got an agenda-fueled view on things, I would say. I don't want to talk about any individuals because that's not what I'm here to do. But how are you feeling? Because I think we both share some similar frustrations, and this is not about saying Ollie's going to get sacked. We want him to get sacked. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about should we give him a new contract or not, because he's going to get one. Let's be honest, and that it is what it is. And I don't want to go in and have a hysteria about that, because ultimately the problem is when we have these owners. Eventually, what's going to happen is they're not going to get backed, and whoever's the manager is going to get stabbed in the back, and they will get sacked. That is the cycle we've seen. So when we talk about this on-field progress, I think one of the issues for me is that the performances we saw the other day is something that we see consistently now. It's not like this is, we're playing poorly and we're winning. The biggest positive from this season to last season is that when we played that badly, we weren't winning games. We weren't finding a way to win. So that's definitely a positive, isn't it? But are you sitting here now and thinking, right, we're a certain amount of years down the line, the style has to improve because it isn't free-flowing football like some people in the fan base do think it is?
Yeah, for me, it's more of the actual quality has to improve, because at the end of the day is you can be happy with results, which, look, we all were ecstatic when Greenwood scored that goal and we won the game. But the big thing that we need to concentrate on is that do we see kind of the level of performance improve over Solskjaer's tenure and over the season as a whole? And as a United fan, it's one of those, like, even under Ferguson, I would be critical during the weekends where we played like crap, but when we would win, you'd still be ecstatic about it. And the problem is, I feel like there's a lot of people that are afraid to actually critique Manchester United when they're playing, because they really like the club and they're really invested, and people feel this kind of divide between the Ollie in and Ollie out, when actually it doesn't have to be so kind of black and white. You can actually be able to say, well, actually right now the performances just aren't good enough, because you look at the game and there was you could probably pick out the players that played well, and there wasn't actually many of them. And it's
one
different.
Or two, Ciaran, honestly.
Yeah, probably one or two that played well. And the issue that I have is with people that are assuming that when we win, oh, it's great that we played really, really well, we deserve to win, we're second, it's brilliant. But you actually have to look past it, because as a fan, look, if you're top of the league and you're about to win, short-term vision is actually really good, because you can end up winning something that season. But when you're in the position that United are in now, where they've no chance to win the league, they've been knocked out of the League Cup, they've been knocked out of the FA Cup, and we're quite lucky to get through in the Europa League from how they played against AC Milan. You do actually have to look at it with the long-term vision as, well, are we going to see the improvements to where we can narrow the gap at the top? People think that we have, where we're now second and last year we came third. But you actually have to look at the performances of the team. And for me as a United fan, it's not something where I go into a game and you're actually enjoying the entire game watching them play. There's, like, how many times have we texted in our group chat or spoken on this podcast about how boring that particular game was, because we're not creating chances, we're not defending well. And this is the whole point. And it was funny at the weekend, very early on in the game, I put out a tweet basically saying that, what do United actually do well? Because, and it was actually a normal question, because if you actually think of it, when we think of the really good teams, so we can take Man City, we can take Bayern Munich, and even take kind of like Barcelona and Real Madrid in their heyday. What did they do well? And you could tell for the likes of Bayern Munich and Man City, their attacking prowess, that there's so many different players that could score. Man City don't even have a striker, and they're scoring incredible goals. You looked at some of the Madrid teams before, and you're like having Ronaldo, Bale, the likes of them. You had your defense that was really strong. When I look at the United team, I see an okay team. I don't see a team that I expect to go on and actually win things because, number one, and this will show you based on if we ask the question, what do United need to do in the summer transfer window? We'll get about 5 different positions because we need improvements in those different areas. So first, we look at the defense. How many times have we complained this season that Manchester United looks so susceptible to concede in the last couple of minutes? That's crosses
coming in,
crosses,
or
corners,
are problems,
anything like that. And it's the reason why everybody's shouting about, oh, we need another centre back beside Maguire. And then we also talk about, oh, we need a right back to push Aaron Wan-Bissaka on. So there's that. The second thing is we've been saying how badly we need a defensive midfielder. So what's the reason for that? Well, it's because the system that we're using with Fred and McTominay doesn't actually work. And it's something that Ollie is being forced to use. We're then talking about, well, if Pogba goes, what are we going to do? We're going to bring somebody else in there. But then at the same time, we're talking about bringing in a right winger and a striker. So at that level, we're talking about all 3 levels of the team that we want improvements from. And yet people get crazy when you point out what actually does this Manchester United team do really well. And unfortunately, watching the games, there's actually not a lot. They're okay at each level, but I don't think they're elite at one. You probably look at Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba, who on their day have played really well. But the problem is you can't only have 1 or 2 players to do that. You need a whole team that's going to work in that way. And unfortunately right now, and I think what James said is actually really, really good, that Solskjaer could be the manager for now because we don't have a team ready to win. And that's what I've said before. We don't have a defense that's ready to win league titles. We don't have a strike force that's ready to win because they're too inconsistent. And people, I think, need to realize that that's just the reality right now.
Yeah, fantastic points. Cohen definitely agrees with you. Look, guys, I'm going to read out Cohen's comment here as well. And I'll read out, there's one from James here. Should our judgment be reserved for when we have a couple more players to come in if we are basing it on style because the players are struggling to be slick? We have been an untidy team. And James is saying here, we will never close the gap when we are constantly 3 to 4 players off competing for a sustainable period. We are told it's a rebuild, but Glazers won't back it adequately. 1 or 2 players a year won't do. Absolutely right. I agree with both of them. Look, guys, we're not here to... I hope no one's taking it as we're bashing Ollie because, as I said at the beginning, ultimately the pattern's very, very similar. We're already seeing the leaks and the briefs coming out, aren't we, Joe, that, there's not a lot of money to spend. And we know why. Look, let's be completely honest with you. We're in the middle of a pandemic. But they're already coming out now. And then you're seeing like linked to Haaland and to Sancho and to all these players. I think we got to temper the expectations a little bit. Well, look, when I'm looking at it, yes, I think that's a fair comment from Cohen to say, should you reserve judgment? You know, the style isn't going to be free-flowing when you've got McFred in midfield. That's absolutely fair. But I think it's what Ciaran was saying. And that's where it comes this Ollie in, Ollie out, you know. This is why. The problem is, I don't sit myself in any camp. I don't sit here and think that. Do I think Ollie is the manager to win us titles? No, but that's just my opinion. But that doesn't mean it's going to cloud from you know, what I will say on a given match day. If I think that United are playing poorly, I'll say they're playing poorly. And the problem is when you say that, people automatically box you into one group. Yeah. And that's the problem, I think, rather than what's actually going on on the pitch. I think when someone says something, I feel like right now, Joe, I can't actually express what I really think about Manchester United because as soon as I do that on the timeline, I get abused. Yeah, and that's part of the problem. And I'll come to James after regarding this. But you know, what is your view on the progress? Because you're someone that we've had many discussions, and you're very much back the manager to the end, and that's what I'll always do. And I love that. I love that about you. But even you sometimes are wavering. And look, United are winning, and they'll if they get second. Look, that's brilliant. We're not taking that away. We just want to analyze sort of the progress and the style.
Yeah, look, and it's not even with it being Ollie, Haider. I back Mourinho till the end. I back Louis van Gaal. I've always been more of an exponent of the players taking more responsibility. But I've always known as well, ultimately, when it does start going wrong, it will always come down to the manager, because it's obviously a lot easier to get rid of a manager than it is to get rid of, I don't know, 23 players or whatever. And I think, was it James who made a great point at that show, but we've talked about it on here before as well, about this idea about Ollie taking us from A to B. But everybody's idea of where B is from A is different. And where is B? And how far down the road are we to get into B? I think Ciaran's spot on. I don't think it would do a manager with a massive reputation the world of good to come to this club at the moment yet, because if he's going to come to this club and want to win things, I don't think this team's there yet. I don't think this squad's there yet. And it'd be difficult for any manager, I've said before, to make Fred a title-winning midfield pivot. It'd be difficult for any manager to make our front three, consistently perform to a stage where we can win a title. And certainly that back four is not ready, and I think is not coachable towards taking us towards a title. So if you think that Ollie's the man to take you from A to B, I'm kind of with that, but I don't think my argument is I don't think we're at B yet. I don't think we're at that stage where we're ready for a new manager to come and take us to the next level. I think there are signs of progression there. We can't get away from it. I think, I like the spirit that the team shows. I like some of the fight. I like the way that they try and play for it. Because I don't think Ollie's an easy coach to play for, by the way, because I don't always see a clear plan about what he wants from his players. But whatever he is trying to get them to do, I think, they do a very good job at trying to do that for him, because I think there's a like there and there's a willingness to do it. And it's amazing what you will do for a manager that you like sometimes. And I don't think he's the easiest coach, like I said, to play for. So I think you have to give the players some credit there. I've been critical of the players when it's gone wrong and said, look, they're not doing enough here. They should be doing better. But there are times when you have to say, actually, the way they were set up today, they were set up to fail, and actually they've done quite well to get a result here, because I don't think he was playing where he should be playing, or he was asked to do what he should be doing. But that's the biggest thing for me. I don't think we're at the point yet where Ollie has finished his work. I think we could still do with a bit more from him. And then obviously, hopefully, a manager who's more qualified, with more experience, will come in and reap the benefits. And that's just how football works. It might not be what Ollie wants, but that's what United will be looking at, I think.
It's very fair points, and I think, let's say I don't want to talk about the next manager, but the next one that comes in will actually turn around and say the reason why I'm successful is because of the foundations that someone like Ollie actually left behind. I mean, James, I'm going to come to you because we talk about progress. 100% there's progress, but what needs to improve next season? Because I think that's really important to think about. What would you like to see, and does it concern you, though, that you're looking at that front line at the moment? Pretty much everyone is woefully out of form. Doesn't that concern you? Looking at Bruno Fernandes, I think there's an element of tiredness as well. We want to see him being a bit more effective in games. Again, I think tiredness is a massive factor. I think one of the positives is that Luke Shaw, Ollie's developed him fantastically well. He looks like the best fullback in Europe right now. I didn't think I was ever going to say that. And I think every single game he's playing at that level. Every single game, it's fantastic. You got to give Harry Maguire credit. I've never really been the biggest fan, but he's always fit, which is a massive, massive thing. You look at United centre backs, hardly any of them can keep fit. There's positives there. I think McTominay's improved. I think that Mason's become a better player. Dan James has improved as well. But does it concern you, though? We're picking out individuals, but I think what I would like to see is, from back to front, we look a little bit better. I'd like to see us a bit more cohesive as a unit. What would you like to see next season, or what would you expect as the next metrics for progression?
I suppose next season, the big thing would probably be, assuming all your players are fit, keeping a stable 11, because we're looking at a team that has no cohesion, because it's a team where you've got Harry Maguire and Bruno Fernandes are the two guaranteed starters, and the rest of them, you could have any guess as to who's playing. So I think a bit of stability within that selection would add to that cohesion, because I'm like you. I was watching the Brighton game, and the cohesion they had, we made the players look like Xavi and Iniesta linking up together. It was telepathic, and we making 5-yard passes that are going a little bit behind, and the whole move slows down. So it's a big drop off, and I think that will affect our performances a lot more. But I think if money is tight this summer, I want to see smart business. I don't want to spend all of our 60 million budget on one world-class player. I think with the amount of resources we've got, it shouldn't be too hard to pick out a hidden gem, or just sort of moneyball it in a way. In that you look at players based on actual numbers and what they're doing and what you want for your team and who is thriving in that specific area. And I think it's probably a better way to go down than the Galactico sort of thing we've done in the past. And I think that is the way we're going. But I still think we could be a bit more savvy with it. You see that Wan-Bissaka was picked one of 840 or 84 right backs or whatever it was, and I think he's been a quality signing, but he doesn't do what Solskjaer wants him to do in that attacking sense. So that was a little bit like right tracks but wrong execution, that sort of thing. So I think sensible recruitment and just squad stability, and we're not going to title for a challenge for a title next season, but we might get a few trophies in the bag, or just be generally more impressed with where the club's at.
Yeah, fantastic points. I definitely agree with you about. Look, I like Wan-Bissaka. I think he's. I think he can improve, but I do think there's definitely deficiencies. He's never going to be a top right back going forward. Look, the goal again the other day as well against Brighton. Again, his marking, on his inside channel is really, his awareness is shocking. It's absolutely shocking, and that's something that needs to improve. But Ciaran, I'm going to come to you, because when do we start turning around and saying, because James has said, I don't think we're going to challenge for the title. I probably agree with him, but surely now, 3 years into the project, you turn around and say, right, United have to challenge for the title next season. And they have to, we're looking at the table now. What, United 14 points behind City? Look, they have to get second. Minimum, I think they need to get the Europa League. But when you're looking at going forward, I think United have to challenge next season. I think United have to win one of the domestic trophies. I think United have to get at least to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And anything apart from that is a failure. And it doesn't matter who the manager is. That should be really the minimum requirement every season. Obviously, we'd love to say we'd win the title. But when do fans turn around and say, right, okay, United have to have a sustainable title challenge?
I do tend to agree with what you're saying. I always come to the conclusion is that when you set out your goals at the start of the season, what is it? And you have to make realistic ones. And if you don't achieve those, the season's a failure. So, like, for example, if you have a genuine chance to win, let's say you have a genuine chance to win the Premier League. So, like, for example, I don't think any of us thought we had a genuine chance to win the Premier League this year. But the likes of City, you look at Liverpool, you look at the way people were talking about Chelsea. Liverpool and Chelsea, their season has been a failure. And the reason for it is that their main goal was to win the Premier League, and they haven't done it. The only team that you look at that you can actually say that had a very successful season this year is Manchester City. You look at them, they're probably favourites to win all 4 trophies that they're still in, and they're still playing incredible football. And that's the thing.
The quadruple.
It does, but you have to look at it on something. It's the fact that they actually deserve it. It's not like they're kind of fluking their way through some of these trophies. It's the fact that they're playing the best football. They're probably playing the best football in Europe. And at the end of the day is you reap what you sow. When you put together a team that works well together, a coach that the players buy into the system that they're putting in place, you get results. And unfortunately for United, we haven't done that recently. And the one thing I would kind of look at is when we want to say when should we challenge, the realistic side of me says it's probably not for, and unfortunately I don't think it's probably for another 4 or 5 seasons. And that's not good, because it goes back to what I said before. To challenge
I'll be 30 by the time we do that.
Yeah. But you think about it, right?
Joe be 70.
What does every Premier League winning team need? They need a really, really good defense and some striker or some attacker that's going to get between 20, 30 goals, or your front kind of 3 or 4 nowadays are getting those kind of 30 to 40 goals in the season. You don't have to have the like Harry Kane or Sergio Aguero to win the Premier League anymore. And City are showing that this season. But they have a phenomenal defense. Unfortunately, United don't have that. And for me, looking at it realistically, and it kind of goes to what James said in his, I think was it James Jackson's in his comment, that the Glazers were always 3 or 4 players away. And unfortunately, until you hit on your big signings, you're going to remain kind of 3 or 4 players away. We always talk about the likes of Harry Maguire, that he's been that stable force. But is he that centre-back that can propel you to win a Premier League title? Probably not, because you look at the likes of Van Dijk, who's already done it for Liverpool. We're now looking this season with Manchester City, and the centre-backs that they've brought in terms of like Ruben Diaz, they've propelled them. So if United hit on whatever, let's say they do sign a centre-back, if they hit on the centre-back and he's phenomenal, well then, okay, you can probably say that maybe it's not going to be as long, and it might be within a year or two, because you having a really good defense makes it so much easier for your attacking players because they don't have to worry about defending the whole time. Like, when do you see Kevin De Bruyne rushing back to get into defense? You don't really, because the players behind him do all that work. I don't really want to have to see Bruno Fernandes in our box or in the corner of our box. I'd prefer to see him where he's actually going to affect the attacking side of the game. Unfortunately, he has to go back, because if we don't, we actually get overloaded. So that's the thing. I think if we do hit on that, and like James said, it doesn't have to be these Galacticos. You can bring in one big named player, but what's wrong with bringing in or scouting properly? You look at it from last season, and you just have to look at Leicester and bringing in Fofana, and obviously when they brought in Tielemans initially on loan, and he worked out and he's been phenomenal for them. You've seen Castagna was brought in by Leicester. It's signings like that as a United fan, it kind of annoys me, because Leicester took advantage of the transfer market last year. And that's something that we were told Manchester United were going to do, but we've never actually done it. We're always told the amount of scouts that Manchester United have, that we're building up the analytics department, which is true. But I don't see the results of that really, because it goes to the same point that James made. We signed Aaron Wan-Bissaka, where they've said they scouted like over 800 right backs, and yet you bought the player down at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, that's definitely absolute rubbish. If they'd done that, they probably ended up with someone like Hakimi or something like that. If we're really talking about scouting properly.
Look, if they did that and they signed someone like Max Aarons, I'd be like, okay, it makes sense, because he was playing at Norwich. He wasn't at that level yet. And then you turn him into playing at that level, well then, yeah, that's fine. And then I'd be like, okay, I can actually see that this has worked. But the problem is, until they show those results, you're not going to believe it. And it goes to the point that there are still some players that are on the fringes that can improve the squad. Unfortunately, for me, some of those players aren't ready yet. Joe, you've mentioned a couple of times, we've been talking over the last kind of week or so, the likes of like Jimmy Garner, who's played really well in the Championship for Nottingham Forest. Now, as a fan of the academy, I still wanted to see him play for another 12 months for Nottingham Forest before he actually is forced into the United side. It's the same thing with Ted Mengi. Now, these players, maybe in 3 seasons, can be kind of pivotal parts of the squad, but right now they're not ready. And that's where I go and say, I don't think we're ready in the short term to actually compete for the league, because I see the likes of Man City playing the way they are. I can't imagine Liverpool are going to have a bad season like they've had this season next year. And then you look at the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Do the performances in the Champions League really make you confident that, let's say we do finish in second, that we're going to be able to get to a quarterfinal of Champions League? You have to look at the kind of data that's in front of you and the performances that we've seen. And unfortunately, I don't see it in the next year or two. It's more of between, I think, the next 3 to 5 years that is the realistic window for Manchester United to actually challenge. And that's where Joe's point earlier on is, where is point B? I think in the next year or two, United have to find where that point B is. If they don't, then we're just going to be in the same cycle.
And like, just to add to that, Haider, like completely respect your expectations, like everybody's, but I don't think I can set any expectations until the transfer window shuts in the summer, because literally it is all on that. It always will be, and that's not like an excuse for Ollie, or it would be the same for any manager. You know, if United, some people might say if United were proactive and maybe made a change in the summer, like a lot of people would like to see. I think a lot of people would love to see United be proactive and be like, maybe this isn't the guy to take us to the next point, so let's make the change now, even though they know they won't. That transfer window will still be key for the next manager coming in, and for you to set your expectations. And I think, you know, when you look back at the summer, Haider, and think about the players that we were linked with. We did transfer shows. We promised, we would almost thought Sancho was nailed on. I'm not saying Sancho takes us to a title, but think about the difference he probably would make to this team now. I mean, we're talking, it's 14 points with a game in hand, so let's assume we win that game in hand. That's 11 points. Sancho wins us a few more. He maybe doesn't give us them 11 points, Haider, but, you know, and that's what you have to look at. You have to think, well, you can set your expectations as much as you want, but you have to put the tools in place. And the worrying thing is that if you set an expectation now to win the league, and by the way, I understand why, not win the league, but transfer league, I understand why you're setting that expectation, because that should be the expectation every year.
But also, Joe, the reason why I say it as well is because you're 3 years now into it. So it would have been with any manager. 3 years in, like you've had 3 years of a job. I know you haven't got the players that you wanted, but 3 years into a job, you're sitting here now and thinking, all right, now it is time. And in most big clubs, it is 3. Klopp, it was 4 years. Yeah. You know, they gave him time. Look, they bought better for him, but that should be the expectation at a club the size of Manchester United. I know the owners who they are, but
yeah, but if you look at United's progress, well, it told you that way, Haider. They got the 4th last year. Well, sorry, 3rd last year. You know, okay, they did it sort of by the skin of their teeth at the end, but then they sort of this year they've gone to 2nd and progressed a bit more. So you think logically as well, if you follow it on, then there has to be a title challenge, and I do think there has to be. I mean, if they can challenge till Christmas this year, why can't they challenge till March next year? But again, it will be dependent on who they get. And then if they don't do that, Haider, and they don't back the manager again, the manager will go. And this is where Ciaran's right by saying we could be 4 or 5 years away again, because depending then who your manager is who comes in, we've talked about this before, you might need a complete different set of players. That's the other worry. The next managerial appointment is massive as well in all this. You know, regardless of where you think point B is, who takes over from Ollie and does it and plays a similar sort of brand with the same ethos, rather than going back to somebody who's going to take us to a different style of football. But we've talked about it before, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to read out some comments. I'll come to you, James. There's a good one here from the Rodfather saying, we're not ready for a title challenge. We're sitting in 2nd only as a result of a full season with Bruno. Take him out of this team, we would be in the same position as previous seasons. And that's what really exposes the lack of investment in key areas. I think the fact that we're having to be so heavily reliant on Bruno. And another good comment here from Nitip saying, if we don't reinforce the midfield this summer, we could be in bother next season for top 4. Will Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, even Spurs be as bad next season? I think that's definitely fair. I've sat here and thought, James, that look, the table doesn't lie, but what has concerned me many times, and why we picked up points, one of the biggest positives, right, is that, and I said it at the beginning, United have gone behind, and I'm going to give credit to Cantona Collar because he's the one that actually gave me this statistic before the masterclass. We've gone behind. We've gone behind. Is it in 23%? Or we can see the goal. We've only gone ahead, 23% of our games in the Premier League this season. So we've gone behind in all the other ones. That's really bad. But what's really positive, as Joe said at the beginning, is that we've found a way to just turn it around. You know, we've got the resolve. There's definitely a bit of fight in this squad. They're definitely playing for the manager. But do you ever sit there and wonder, you know, and look at our performances and you think, you know, we don't look like a 2nd place team. I'm not saying that, you know, that United don't deserve to be there. On this season, they do. But you do sometimes think, you know, we're not showing the quality that we know we can or that we should be showing. Do you ever sit there and think that, or is that just me?
Yeah, definitely recently as well. I think there's been points in the season where I've thought, wow, this is United. This is post-lockdown football that we were playing. But, you know, recently it has been poor football. We're getting results, but they're not convincing. They're not exciting to watch in any sense. And it is frustrating because we have played that football so many times under Solskjaer. And that's the most frustrating thing. You know, the lads are capable of it. But I think it's also worth noting. Yes, we don't look like a second place team, but I don't think we really have, other than the season we finished second under Mourinho. And you can only play what's in front of you. It's all well and good saying Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal have all dropped off, Spurs aren't at the level, but United need 6 points to match their total for last season, and they've got 8 games to do it. So there's even points wise, if you can take that as a barometer of progression, and I think that shows it again. But it was a point raised yesterday when I was talking to someone as well. Solskjaer is actually playing with a lot of players that he was just given. There's a lot of players in this squad that he was just given and told to make the most of, and I think we're seeing that with Luke Shaw. He's making the best of him. We've seen he's brought in Alex Telles, so Luke Shaw probably before this season wasn't his first choice, wasn't the sort of player he wanted, and now he's turned him into the best left back in the league on form. Fred under Mourinho, he was just thrown away after a couple of games, wasn't he? He was absolutely no one. And then last season, he was a very good player. This season, we're seeing his flaws, but he's still better than we probably thought he would be when we saw him under Mourinho. He's getting the best out of Rashford. He's bringing through Mason Greenwood. He did get the best out of Martial last season, and obviously something's happened this season, but we're not sure. But he's sort of stabilised Pogba as well. So, and then you look at the signings he has made, and they've all the ones that are in the first team have made an impact. Wan-Bissaka, as much as he is flawed, he's a massive improvement on Ashley Young, isn't he? Who would probably still be here if we still had Mourinho. And then you look, Harry Maguire is comfortably our best centre back. He's the mainstay in our team. He also Solskjaer built the best defence. Well, it was like second best defence in Europe last season with Victor Lindelof, who again was being labelled as a flop. So and then Bruno Fernandes, obviously another one of his signings, and he's been phenomenal. So it would be very interesting to see what United can be like and what the play would be like if Solskjaer had 11 players that he was completely set on and that he wanted at the club and that were perfect for his style, whatever that is. But I think until we get to that point, and that's not going to be, providing he's even given time, it's not going to be for another couple of years. I still don't. That's why I don't think we'll title for a challenge next season. But I think that's all I have to say. I thought I was going to say something else.
Point. That's why I brought you on, mate, because it's fresh perspective. Myself, Ciaran, and Joe, we talk every single week about it, and obviously the listeners know our opinions, but it's you make some really good points, and it's sort of similar to what Ciaran said. He thinks 3 or 4 years. I think for me, definite improvements, but I think next season really is a really big season for us. The summer window is massive, and I just have very little hope or expectations, if I'm honest with you. I think we'll get Jadon Sancho. I really do think we'll get him. All the reports today are suggesting so. I don't think we'll get Haaland. I know myself and Rob have debated this very heavily on the Masterclass, and I think when you're looking at Haaland, obviously he's got a release clause, I think, the following summer. When you're spending 150 million, and we don't have 150 million to spend, and also blowing your budget on one player, I'm not so sure. But Ciaran, I'll bring you in now, and let's talk about Jesse Lingard. I want to bring up this comment from Cohen, and he's basically just taken exactly what I was going to say. So thank you, Cohen. No, I'm kidding. So he's saying on Jesse, West Ham a lot of space to operate in a different ball game for that team. Also have Jesse in form, but as a sub for Bruno on an average day, Jesse won't be able to deliver what we need. So sell. You know what United fans love to do, Ciaran? They love revisionism. They just love it, mate. They absolutely love revisionism. We've seen the same with Romelu Lukaku. I've seen people do it with Alexis Sanchez. I'm like, come on, that's going a bit too far. We've seen it with Chris Smalling, obviously when he went to Italy. We've seen it with Jose Mourinho. Oh, well, we came second. Look, that season, up until that Liverpool game, we were playing some great football. After that, he just went chicken, didn't he? And we saw what we saw. So I think that when you're looking at all these sort of factors, Jesse Lingard, he needed a new environment. He needed a new club. He needed to just go and play football. He was not playing football at Manchester United. He obviously wasn't fancied by Ollie. Where are you sitting on all of this? I mean, look, I'm delighted to see Jesse do well, but look, United have got to maximize the money. Money's tight. Get him out in the nicest way possible, and either look to broker a deal for someone like Declan Rice, as the comments are saying. We've got some serious problems in midfield. Until that defensive midfielder, that's what worries me the most. Until that defensive midfield position is fixed, we're not going to improve as a side. And we're not linked to many, if any. It's really just Declan Rice. But again, they're tentative links, aren't they? So, yeah, where are you sitting on the Jesse sort of questions? I know you're a big fan of him. And the last time we spoke about him, you did speak about how you met him and how lovely he was and things like that.
Yeah, look, Jesse's one of those that you really want to do well, especially when he's at United. I mentioned that at the end of one of the seasons, it must have been, I think there was a season before we were in the FA Cup against Crystal Palace, and he, at the end of the last game, came to the local pub and basically bought everybody a drink there. And you don't see many footballers do that, especially Jesse. That he's always been there for kind of the fans, because he's kind of very similar to Marcus Rashford. They feel like they are fans of the club while still playing for the club. For Jesse, it's one of those, I think everybody knew he needed to get away from Manchester, not just to get away from the club, because at the end of the day, he went through a lot of stuff over the past 2-3 years, and stuff that I think a lot of journalists and a lot of fans tried to question him on, and really it was none of their business, because there was a lot of personal stuff that was going on. So the best thing for him was to go. And we spoke about it when the loan, I think we were kind of on a podcast when the loan was kind of announced. And it was really good for Jesse, because it was something that he really needed to do, get some game time, get playing. If he played well, he'd actually have a chance to get into the England squad, which you're actually seeing at the moment, that he's been one of the more informed players in the Premier League. So in that turn, yes, I would want him to go, because it's best for his career. I also don't think if you bring him back to Manchester United, I don't think you see the same type of performances, because they played a different brand of football. Now, where I completely agree with you, Haider, is that there's other teams that are going to be interested in Jesse Lingard. So I would not just be like saying to West Ham, okay, we'll sell Jesse Lingard to you for 20 million. No, the way the market is now, if West Ham had Jesse Lingard and they're selling him to Manchester United, it'd be 70 or 80 million. So, like, why just because he's been successful there? The fact that he's been successful should mean that West Ham would value him more than bringing in someone that they don't know is going to be a successful player in their system. So if I was United, I would try and get as many teams that could possibly be involved in trying to buy Jesse Lingard, and do try and get the best price. Because, again, it's not very often that Manchester United can get a decent transfer fee for a player. This is one period of time where a loan has worked superbly for the club, where the player needs a break from Manchester United, needs to be somewhere else. But then at the same time, the club do need to look at, you need to maximize the amounts of money there, because we heard it before that there was a lot of teams that were interested in bringing him in on loan as well. We've heard the likes of Everton and stuff have been rumored to like him. You could see him easily playing for even Leicester, the Brighton side, Leicester, Brighton that we just saw under Graham Potter would be good. Yeah. So, like, all Manchester United really need is two teams to be interested. They have one in West Ham already. If you can get another team and you can bring that price from 20 million up to 40, let's say, you've done very well, that you've actually made quite a lot of money, because if you sold them in January, you were probably selling them for about 10 or 12 million. So the fact that he's performed so well, United should dig their heels in. Even if it lasts until the last day of the transfer window, you dig your heels in until you get the best possible price. And that's what good clubs do. And it's the first time in a long time, I think, United are in a position where they can actually sell someone, probably at the height of the market value. I think as close to it anyway. I think the height probably would have been the World Cup year. If they were really planning on moving on, they probably should have done it then.
Yeah, I think he's got a year on his contract left, Joe.
Yeah, look, I just see a situation where we're going to be talking all summer about United sort of getting rid of Jesse Lingard for Declan Rice, and we're going to end up with Thomas Souček, aren't we, at midnight on deadline day? David Moyes style with Fellaini, aren't we? I can see where it's going, mate. But no, I think the interesting thing there is that as Ciaran went through the clubs that he's been linked with, it's a really good point. I mean, he mentioned two clubs there, Brighton, Leicester City. What do they have that we want? They've got players that United have been linked with this summer. We've talked about Leicester, obviously, with the likes of Tielemans. I know you and Rob were talking about that on the Masterclass the other day. Wilfred Ndidi is obviously another player that United have been linked with. You've done a podcast, Haider, with Jeremy Smith about Yves Bissouma and obviously the links there. I think United have to be clever. I think Ciaran's right. I think Lingard's playing well enough now where United could get pretty close by giving them Lingard to getting one of these players back, if you know what I mean. His stock has gone up that much. I mean, yes, United will have to probably pay some money as well, especially if you're dealing with Declan Rice and Ndidi or a Tielemans. But, I think they have to be savvy with how they do the business because we know they haven't got a big budget this summer. I mean, James touched on it earlier, 60 million. Some people are talking about, which is peanuts really in this sort of day and age. So this is one deal where they can be really clever with it, how they structure it, and get something that they want in return. Similarly with Paul Pogba as well. We know, obviously, it's going to be difficult for him to move this summer. But if he moves this summer, he'll be moving to a club that United have players where they're interested in them. So with Real Madrid, obviously, the Varane links, Juventus, also with the Dybala links, things like that, and other players that are attractive to United, Ronaldo. So United have to get clever this summer. I think someone said about earlier, I think it was James, about doing clever business. And I think this is, the Lingard deal, and if indeed Pogba moves as well, they're two deals where I think United could be clever and get something back in return and not just worry about a transfer fee here. Actually think about adding something to your squad that you need because the problem is if they sell Jesse Lingard to West Ham for 40 million cash, let's say, for example, do we trust the club, one, to put that 40 million back into transfer fund? And two, do we trust the club to be able to do another deal away from that? We know it's going to take ages for them to sell Lingard. They never do anything overnight, really. So it's all the time constraints of it all. So if they have a club that's interested in Jesse and they have a target at that club, then do the deal and be clever about it. But on Jesse, from a personal point of view, I agree with everything Ciaran's saying. I think he should stay at West Ham. I think that shirt is probably weighs about 3 times less than the United shirt on his shoulders. I think there comes a pressure with playing for United that I think over a long enough period of time now he's shown that he's probably not quite ready for or up for. And I think at West Ham, he's going to have a team there that's going to play more around him and make him more of a focal point of the team, especially if he keeps playing well like this, where he'll never get that at Man United. So I'm pleased to see him enjoying his football. Like Ciaran said, he had a lot of issues off the pitch. And when people are like that, you just want to wish the best for them. Well, I do anyway. And I think the best for him is now to break away and enjoy what's left of his career.
Fantastic points. I completely agree. James, I'm going to bring you in, but I'm going to bring in sort of a question. It's good on here from Nitip saying, I wonder, would United have agreed to sell on the price for Jesse when he went on loan initially? United aren't clever enough to do that. I don't think. But James, look, talking about Jesse, one of my biggest fears, and this is not to say that I think he's a bad player. I really don't. I'm just so delighted for him that he's gone and enjoying his football again. He's got back into the England squad. It's very clear that Gareth Southgate is a fan of him. We saw him at the World Cup. Jesse was, one of the first names on the sheet, and he manipulates space very, very well. It's actually something that you want to see from Donny van de Beek, and I think Donny van de Beek did do that for the goal the other day. One of the biggest issues, I think, as was mentioned by Cohen earlier in the comments, was that United don't play. They play teams that sit, deeper. The space is constricted. That you need to be good on the ball. Not that Jesse isn't good on the ball, but it would be very much a United move, wouldn't it, to bring him back and hail him almost as a new signing. I know we shouldn't take everything that's spoken about at face value. But there are a few comments that are being thrown around. That are concerned. I know Ollie also said it's not about Ollie, but you're hearing things, hearing some of these things saying, "Oh, United are very impressed with Jesse Lingard. He's going to be like a new signing." And I'm like, "Oh, please God!" But it would be the most Manchester United thing to do that, wouldn't it? And so, where are you sitting on this? Because if he does show some of this form, I know he'd be a bit part player. But some would argue, not myself, but some would argue, he's got a value for this United squad. And with Van der Beek struggling a little bit now, would Jesse be a little bit better than him? You have to say on current form he would. I mean, G-Man saying in the comments, teams don't set up a low block against West Ham. Exactly. That's the point I've been making, and Cohen made that at the beginning. He's got a lot more space to play in, and he's he's quite devastating on the counter, isn't he?
Yeah. I think it'd be stupid to bring him back, both from the club standpoint and from Jesse Lingard's point of view. I don't see a world where he would want to come back. You know, I get he's a United fan. He's been with the club all his life, but that sentiment can only take you so far when you're making 5 appearances a season and all of them are in cup competitions. So I don't see why he'd throw the best form of his life out the window just to play for the club that he supports every so often. And then for United, I think bringing him back, he's playing so well right now because he's playing all the time. His confidence is up. He's out of the limelight. As soon as he comes back, he's not going to be playing all the time because why would you have him in over Fernandes? And then that confidence will go. There'll also be press speculation about, you know, he's made a mistake. United have ruined his career, etc., etc., and that'll get on his back as well. It comes with the territory at United. You can't get away from the press at United, no matter what you do. So it'd be stupid for us to bring him back, and it'd be stupid for us to want him to come back. But I think what Jesse Lingard's also showing a big sort of sign of progression in the way the club's run, along with the rest of the loans. Well, quite a few of the loans that we've done this season. Because when was the last time a lone player ever really went on loan and impressed at United? It doesn't happen. But now we've got Lingard, who has been nominated for the last 2 Premier League Player of the Month, sorry. And we've got James Garner on loan at Nottingham Forest, which, as someone from Nottingham, you hear every single day how well James
How
Garner
good
is
has he
doing.
been? I mean, we've been talking about him a lot in the group chat, haven't we, guys? But James, you know, obviously, I know you're from Nottingham. What is the buzz around with him? Because he looks, I mean, it's easy for him. But Ciaran said earlier, he needs that extra year. I think he still needs that extra year. Don't rush him back.
Yeah, I don't think we need to bring him back just yet. We had a Forest correspondent on our podcast the other week talking about him, and they were saying they've never seen a lone player like him. It's going to be heartbreaking for them when he goes, because there's genuinely shouts for fans aside from Forest fans that he is one of the best midfielders in that league, and he's come in and done it straight away at Forest. So I think get him on loan again next season, definitely. But you look at also Ethan Laird and Tendon Mengi, who are getting minutes in their respective clubs as well, and it shows that we're moving in the right direction in terms of how the club's being run. Suddenly you get people who know what they're doing, sending players out on correct loans and stuff like that. So it's good for the future. But yeah, Lingard, we've got to sell him while he's still got money as well, while he's still got monetary value, because the fear at the start of this season was that we were going to lose him on a free and it'd just be useless. So if we can get, £30 million, a ridiculous sum, if we can get that, you got to cash in.
Yeah, you make a great point, and as well, I think, guys, make sure you go and check out. We'll plug James's podcast at the end, but go and check this podcast out with this Nottingham correspondent, because me and Ciaran and Joe consistently in the group chat every time he's been scoring every single week, but he's absolutely killing over there. And the club did a fantastic job there. I think the club deserve credit because he was at Charlton. He wasn't really. He was started. Watford. Watford, yeah. And he played and. He was started off at the beginning, then he wasn't getting game time. The club could have brought him back and shoved him in the 23s, but they sent him out on loan again. And that was really good. And he's someone that's been on United's sort of radar, I suppose, in terms of being a player that will make it for a long time. And, it's great to see him playing as well in a league that's physical. And he'll be getting a physical challenge as well, which is fantastic. And I'm delighted to see that. And Mengi, by all accounts as well, is also doing pretty well. But James, I'm going to come to you as well. We're going to wrap up with, we'll quickly wrap up with De Gea and Henderson. James, I want to get your opinion on this. So we're looking at Ollie's comments. I think he said the right thing. Look, he has got 2 number ones. They're 2 fantastic keepers. What I really find difficult to stomach is the. I feel like with David De Gea, it's almost like in some respects, some have tarnished his legacy. I feel like what we've seen over the last few years, with his mistakes and not being at the level that we expected David. I mean, he's still a fantastic keeper. But I feel like the biggest problem with the fan base is that, when someone's not performing, we saw it with Jesse, by the way. Jesse was absolutely, no one cares that he scored the goal in the FA Cup final. No one cares that he scored the goal in the League Cup. It's almost like they eradicated what he'd done in the past because he'd been playing so poorly. It's that revisionism I talk about. But David De Gea has probably been the player in the last 7 years since Sir Alex who genuinely stood up and been genuinely world class. I mean, that season or 2 where he was on top of his game, there aren't many better goalkeeping, performances in the season than that. I mean, where are you sitting on this? Are you thinking it's the right time to look to move him on and bring in Henderson, or are you of the view that it's a little bit too early? We need to see till the end of the season how Henderson's going to cope, because he had a bit of a shaky game. I think it's the right decision. I think, although I love David De Gea, and I'm not 100% convinced with Henderson, I do think it's the right decision, and he's the man to go forward.
Yeah, I think I'll start off by saying that David De Gea's name and legacy has garnered so much more respect than he's currently getting, because, in my opinion, he's kept United from doing what Arsenal have done this last 2 seasons, falling into mediocrity, because we've never finished, that season with David Moyes, we finished 7th, but we've never finished lower than that. And a big part of that is because of David De Gea. We really could be in a completely different spot if he hadn't led us to competitive finishes every single season. If United as a club had a season where they finished 10th, how catastrophic would have that been to the club? So he's earned a lot of respect there, but like I said with Jesse Lingard, I think sentiment only gets you so far, and I think that there'll be big eyes on how Solskjaer deals with this situation, especially if we work on the assumption that De Gea will leave this season. I think that he needs to be careful to show De Gea the respect he needs, while also having the team's best interests at heart, because I believe Henderson has overtaken him, and Henderson's impact on the entire team is greater than De Gea's at this point in time. I think we're seeing a more confident keeper, a more vocal keeper. We're seeing defensive improvements since Henderson's come in. And I think they just slightly outweigh De Gea's world-class shot-stopping ability. So I want, Henderson's the future, and I think we need to start the future as soon as possible, because it's inevitable. And so that's my opinion. But you've got to do that without sort of ripping the Band-Aid off of the De Gea situation as well. I think if we can manage it well, we can find De Gea a good club that he's going to maybe even become one of the best keepers in the world again, like he has been. Just get him out of the situation he's in, because something's not right with him. But yeah, I think deal with it with respect. But Henderson's the one to go for.
Absolutely fantastic. Joe, I just want to touch on something before I come to you. I mean, James absolutely nails it, I think, and he's definitely right in terms of ripping the Band-Aid off without causing too much of a fuss. Look, David De Gea is a top keeper still, and he's a keeper that can go and be number 1 nearly anywhere in the world. Do you think it is an issue, though, of how we handle this? I mean, look, one of my biggest gripes with certain fans is that they ask Ollie to be more ruthless, right? Go on, Ollie, be more ruthless. Well, he is being ruthless. He's putting the keeper that's almost single-handedly saved United over the last 7 years. He's put him on the bench. So how much more ruthless? Now they're criticizing him. Oh, you're treating De Gea in a negative way. You can never win. But you're looking at it and you're thinking now, like, if United, manage this perhaps incorrectly, or David gets upset or whatever, this potentially could backfire. And look, are you expecting United to pay his contract out, or are you expecting them to try and command a fee? I think his I said on the Masterclass, 540 or 550,000 pounds a week on goalkeeper wages. That is obscene. They've got to get Romero out as well. So yeah, how do you expect the club to sort of operate with this problem? And are you someone who is looking forward to the prospect of Henderson as the number 1?
Look, first of all, how do I think the club will operate? Well, that's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it? Because I've got no confidence in how they'll do this. But what I will say is I echo everything James says in terms of they must do this right, Haider. They must do this right. This is a player that has given everything for us. Look, you might have your doubts whether he wanted to go or not in 2015. There are some conspiracy theories. I've just been doing a show with Paulie. I mean, Paulie's somebody who is absolutely convinced that he didn't want to go to Real Madrid in 2015. And the whole fax machine thing was a myth and everything like that. And the truth is he never really wanted to go. But whether he did or he didn't, Haider, I think what he gave United after that, what probably was a dream move for him. You think about Ronaldo and how much he wanted to go to Real Madrid, and think about what Ronaldo would have got if we'd have promised him that year and we didn't sell him the next year. I don't think we'd have got a very happy Ronaldo. And De Gea just got his head down and he's given everything for this club. And I think it's massive now that United get it right, but also for the same reasons as you say, Haider, you've got to think about squad harmony. I think David's a very popular member of this United team within certain sections, although there was a report the other day don't know who it was, but someone wrote a report the other day suggesting that a lot of the United team thought that Dean Henderson probably should have been given the number 1 shirt a bit earlier in the season, which was quite interesting, a bit of an insight there into what some of the players may think. But I think there's no doubt about it. David's a very popular member of the squad, and and I can understand that because he comes across very well. He can see he's got a genuine love for the club. But, I don't think this is all what United want either. I think there's some elements to this deal that might be what Dave wants as well. You know what I mean? I think Dave might like this idea of going back to Spain this summer. He's obviously just had a daughter as well, a baby daughter. His wife works over there. She's never lived over in England. She's been quite outspoken about what she thinks about England, to be fair. So, she's never sort of committed to coming over here. She works full-time over there. And I think he probably realises now that, it's probably time for him to go back home and spend some time with his family. So if that is a factor as well, then even more so, United have to make this happen for him. And normally I would say, look, get everything you can out of this deal. If you can get 50 million and his wages off the book brilliantly, that's great. But I do think United have to just sort of come second fiddle in this a little bit. And I would like to make sure that if they don't quite get the transfer fee that they want, they don't stop this from happening if it's what Dave wants. I'd hate to think that United don't let David De Gea go back to Spain because they wanted 50 million and whoever it is in Spain's offering 45.
Just do the right thing, yeah. Yeah,
just do the right thing here now, I think. And look, massive respect to Dave. Like James said, he kept us relevant in those years. We would have dropped out of Europe. We'd have probably dropped like Arsenal the season they've had. And who knows where that that would have done for our reputation. So, yeah, I've got massive respect for him. I do think there's still issues with Dean, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I don't think it's sustainable, as we've seen, to have 2 world-class goalkeepers in your first team squad. I mean, if anyone ever wondered what it looks like, you've seen it this season. It just doesn't work because when Dave's playing and being regular, Dean's not happy, and vice versa. And I understand why Dave's not happy. Look, this is one of the best goalkeepers in the world. I honestly believe if De Gea goes to a PSG or a Juve, he could be the difference. He could take those teams to win in the Champions League because if you look at the goalkeepers that they've got, Chesney at Juventus at the moment and Keylor Navas obviously at PSG, I don't think they're the greatest goalkeepers in the world. And you could look and they could be the difference between you winning a final or not. So I think, he can definitely go somewhere and be successful and maybe win things he's not even won with United.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The problem that United are in is because he's on so much, it's very difficult for them to actually sell David De Gea because there's only so many teams. Like we talk about the ideal scenario now would be him getting to go back over to Spain, but you look at it and it's like if Madrid genuinely want to buy Erling Haaland, they can't afford to spend money on David De Gea, and that's just the way it is. And I know that they're really, really interested in getting Haaland. It's basically both Barcelona and Real Madrid don't want to lose face by losing that tug of war. They'd be happy if someone like Man City or Chelsea bought him, but if one of their rivals do, especially with what's going on with Barcelona's new president, he wants to make a splash, and then Madrid not really signing anyone when their fans are so used to these Galacticos coming in. It makes it really difficult because we've seen it already. Juventus can't afford many signings. We've seen it with all the links with Paul Pogba. They can't afford to be spending big money. So then you're really left with PSG. And if PSG don't want to bring him in or if they don't want to spend the money, then what do you do? Because to have to buy David De Gea out of his contract, it's almost like you'd be spending the money on a midfielder.
It's going to be like 40 million I read somewhere.
Yeah, so it's
about 90 million a year is on.
Yeah, so it's really difficult in that one. Yes, I think the ideal scenario is that you sell David De Gea, even if you sell them for 15, 20 million, right? And because look, if you're planning on moving on from, you don't genuinely need to maximize the amount that you're getting for him. You just need to be able to do it where the player's happy, you don't leave on bad terms, and you already have your plan in place going forward. I mentioned it at the start of the season that I think that this was the season that you probably did have to replace David De Gea, and with Dean Henderson coming in, you saw he played really well for Sheffield United. The biggest question was, could he make that step up when he's not doing a lot in the game and make critical saves? And I think we've seen this season that he's been able to do that. The problem with a goalkeeper is if you're not playing week in, week out, you're probably going to make mistakes. So that's why United have to get rid of either Henderson and De Gea. And I think at this point in time, it would be foolish to get rid of Henderson because you've dubbed him as your future. And once you look, the minute United signed Henderson to a 6-year contract, the writing was on the wall that David De Gea was leaving. And whether they said it or not, David De Gea definitely knew, his agent would have known as well. So don't be surprised if they have been in contact with other clubs. And look, United will take a loss, I think, financially on David De Gea because they gave him so much money. But I think it's probably worth it in the end. What Joe said is right. He'll probably go on to win a Champions League with somebody, and United fans will then be like, why did we sell David De Gea? But the problem is you have to look at it from different situations. I agree with Joe. I think he should go back to Spain if he can go to Madrid, because that's where he's always wanted to be. He can say, it didn't really happen, but look, we all saw the pictures of him on that plane, that he was ready to go over to.
And you missed out on 3 Champions Leagues, Ciaran. That's a sad.
I feel sorry for him because he was basically forced to stay at United during their worst period of time. He should have left, and as a United fan, that actually pains me to say, because like those years where he pretty much kept us, like James said, kind of respectable, he deserves so much more than what we were putting out on the pitch. And like you said, he could have been kind of lauded as one of Real Madrid's top goalkeepers behind Iker Casillas because it would have been their best period in terms of winning Champions Leagues. And I do feel bad for him because at the end of the day, he was an absolutely fantastic goalkeeper. But I think people do let his style kind of cloud their judgment as well. He was fantastic, but then you also have to look at, it doesn't always have to be that sexy name that comes in that is your top class keeper. Think about it. Van der Sar was signed for 3 million, and maybe even less than 3 million, and was one of our best goalkeepers. So just because people may not be convinced on Dean Henderson at the moment doesn't mean that he can't become one of the great goalkeepers at Manchester United, because there's a lot to work with there. I think the one thing I like about him is he's not afraid, and it's one thing you actually need as a goalkeeper. You need to kind of be cocky. You need to be confident in your own ability, and it's one thing that Dean Henderson has in abundance. And I think it's the one thing that people have always criticized Dave for, is that he's not outgoing enough in the Premier League. Because look, we've seen it in European football. You don't have to come out for every cross. Being a shot stopper is probably more important in Champions League and Europa League football. But in the Premier League, if you can't command your box, you're putting your defense in a bad situation. And we're starting to see Dean slowly improve on it. But the problem is you're not going to be able to get that out of De Gea anymore. So I think it's very similar to the Lingard situation, except for you'll get a pretty decent deal for Lingard. That for both the player and probably the club, the best situation is to let them go on to kind of whoever comes in for them.
Yeah, fantastic points. And what I will add to that as well is that De Gea was phenomenal. I mean, the Arsenal game always stands out to me. I mean, that one was amazing. But also, the fact he had to make that many saves during his time at United also shows how bad the team was, how bad it was. So you'd hope, but this is something that Rob said last night or the other night on the Masterclass, which is a great point. He said, I don't think Dean Henderson's ever going to get to David De Gea's level when he was at his peak. He doesn't think Dean Henderson will probably ever be a world-class, one of the best in Europe, but he'll be a very good Premier League goalkeeper. And look, if the rest of the team is good and he marshals and he communicates and he does all of that well and he commands his area and he's a good shot stopper. He's not a bad shot stopper. The only concern probably is his sort of play with his short game, playing out the back. That is a bit of a concern, but he hasn't been too bad at it. But I think I think it's time that David goes, and he probably won't have as much to do because United don't give as many chances away as they were doing 2-3 years ago. There's one quick question here which I'm going to answer from G-Man. What's going on with Juan Mata's contract extension? Look, we're obviously hearing that he might get a contract extension. I love Juan Mata so much. I think he's just a fantastic player to have around the squad. That's what I think it's probably about. If you're losing David De Gea, you're losing a few more, Jesse Lingard, a few more experienced players. You still want to have one or two that have been there and done that. Mata's probably there because he's a great influence. Ciaran, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think there's talk that they would like him after his career is over to actually coach at the club as well, because he's one of the smartest players in terms of footballing ability at the club, and he's been really engrossed with everything to do. So the likes that we've seen with the likes of Carrick, you've seen Evra, you've seen them. I think they want to have Mata be involved with the club even when he's done, and I think the last thing they want to do is to let him go somewhere else where he probably won't play as much either. It's probably just as useful for them to have him come up, especially you see players like Hannibal Mejbri come up that'll play in a similar position. It's always good to have experienced professionals to be able to teach these young players how to be a professional footballer, especially with the amount of money these players get when they come up. It's really important to have players like Juan Mata, even if they're not playing that often. I think that's something that we don't actually think about as much. It doesn't have to be just what they do on the pitch, but how they affect the dressing room is really important.
Yeah, good point. He's also quite invested, isn't he, in Manchester? He's got a restaurant there. You know.
There's some rumours as well that he's been working with the women's team, Haider, which, is quite interesting. I know I don't want to sound cynical, but obviously United are looking to grow that aspect of the club and that aspect of the brand, and to have someone like Juan Mata maybe involved there, would do that team the world of good as well in terms of reputation. And also, even the academy, like Ciaran said there, wants to say he couldn't have some sort of coaching role there, which would be great anyway. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think there's lots of different facets, and I think a new contract would have aspects of a coaching role within it as well, I think, to be fair.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you very much. James, absolute pleasure having you come on. I hope you enjoyed it. You gave some great insights. Where can the listeners find your fantastic podcast and some of your work? I mean, look, you're an aspiring journalist. Obviously, you're studying. You're going to be there or thereabouts. You'll be hopefully not leaking the team news before 2 or 3 hours before. But where can all the listeners find it? Because you're doing some really great work and you're getting some really great guests on.
Oh, I'm blushing. Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant. But check out the One United podcast on YouTube or at One United Pod on Twitter. And then I might put out an occasional tweet, but you don't have to look at that. It's usually just nonsense.
No, absolutely. Obviously, myself, Joe, and Ciaran, we met James when we did a few stuff in the summer. So we'll definitely get him back on. He's offered a great perspective, something that some of us haven't even offered. So thank you very much, James, Ciaran, and Joe. As always, thank you very much. We've got my cat trying to get out of the room. Guys, thank you for all your comments. It was fantastic. Really great engagement. Make sure you check out James's podcast he did with the Nottingham Forest correspondent. We'll put that in the description. Definitely check it out because it's a great insight into Jimmy Garner. He's been absolutely on fire. He's shown everything and more than I actually thought he was capable of, which is fantastic. Make sure you check out the Masterclass as well, which came out a couple of days ago. It was a great victory. Not great performance, but it was fantastic. Guys, thank you again. Make sure you keep well and rested. Don't get ill. Don't get COVID. And we will see you on Sunday after the big one against Jose Mourinho's Tottenham.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.